Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Here we are in April. It is the new financial year, and that means that it is a good time to start selling or improve your sales process to sell to corporates, because you have 3 months until the summer holidays kick in. And when I say the summer holidays kick in, I mean you want to kick back, relax, spend time with the families that you have, and just sunshine in general. That is what I'm really, really hoping for this year. I just want sunshine. So, as a result, I am recording this little episode on buying indicators because a little while ago, I sent out an email about buying indicators and I said, hit reply if it's something you're interested in learning more about. And actually, a lot of you did respond. And I think that this is the perfect time of year to start looking at buying indicators and the importance of them. Because actually, one of the big things that I'm seeing is that a lot of people don't really know what a buying indicator is, and they don't know where it falls in the sales process. And actually, they don't know how to navigate buying indicators that are not straight up, yeah, let me buy that. And so this is problematic, to say the least, for our sales processes. So I want to go through today and help you understand exactly what a buying indicator is, where they fall in terms of the sales process, and how you can handle things that don't actually feel like buying indicators, but are. All right. So we're going to cover a little bit of ground today. And before I get into that, I just want to let you know that, in case you didn't know, we have 14 spots left on our live C-Suite 2025 cohort right now. So as of the time that I'm recording this, we have 14 spots left to our live cohort. Now, for those of you who don't know what the live C-Suite cohort is this year, we actually have an amazing opportunity for you to do more in the C-Suite community and get a little bit more access to me as part of the C-Suite 2025. Now, we did limit that to 70 spaces. So obviously, for those of you who are very good at maths when you're listening to the podcast, you will know that at this time we have 56 amazing individuals inside that cohort. And I am opening it up to the last 14 spaces. Now, in the C-Suite 2025 live cohort, you're getting access to all of the normal C-Suite things. So the entire portal of business-to-business sales strategies, techniques, and templates that me and my clients use every single month to sign corporate clients consistently. You're also getting access to 2 in-person events, both held in London, one later this month in April on the 28th, and one later in the year in September. And you'll be in London learning and implementing sales skills real time. Now, the reason that this is so important is because I see a lot of people who actually can sit on calls with me and tell me the theory of selling, and tell me all about what they understand the sales process to be in a really comprehensive and articulate way. Unfortunately, we don't get enough practice at really using those skills. And that is stopping a lot of entrepreneurs being successful with their sales processes and with their sales calls, with their objection handling, their negotiation, and much, much more. So you are getting access to 2 in-person events, like I say, one at the end of April on the 28th, one in September, that will see you implementing real-time sales skills in a safe learning environment, which means you're going to be able to use those skills back at desk and keep them feeling really fresh. You're also going to get access to monthly hot seats where you can ask me any questions that you have about your business. And these are absolute dynamite. People come to these and bring along their lead generation metrics. They bring along their sales call structure metrics. They bring along any client scenarios that they are dealing with, offers that they might be thinking about, pricing that they want to discuss, literally anything that's going on for them inside their business so that they can get my direct support and feedback on that. And again, it's a selective group, so I get to know everybody really, really well. And that makes me really happy, but makes the advice that I give much, much more tailored as well, which is awesome for your results if you're going to go on and implement. You also get access to a sales sprint to maximize your revenue, to make sure that you know exactly what you need to do to generate cash flow quickly. And you get access to our awesome private Facebook communities for both the C-Suite 2025 and for our alumni network as well. And these are both amazing spaces to network, to get support, and to generate referrals from other business owners who are focusing on selling B2B, so to organizations. So if you are somebody who is currently generating less than 100K in revenue from corporate contracts, you need to be in the C-suite, and we have 14 spaces left to join this current cohort. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go to the show notes, grab the link, have a little look, and make sure that you jump in if you're ready, because now is an awesome time to sell to corporates, to build your revenue, but only if you know what you're doing. Okay. Now, that being said, we've got this episode on buying indicators. I'm very excited about it. I'm feeling very jazzed. And one of the reasons that I'm feeling so jazzed about it actually is because I spent some time recently delivering, must have been 5 sessions to an organization with a large sales team, all about buying indicators, because this is something that doesn't just happen to solo business owners. All right. It's not something that is it is experienced by people who just haven't come from a sales background. This is something that happens across the board. So it happens to professional salespeople as well. And we have to have regular reminders and refreshers so that we can train our brains, train that awesome reticular activating system in our brains to react to situations differently, and to remind us that actually not everything is as it seems when somebody says something unexpected or gives an objection. Sometimes these are not negative things. In fact, a lot of the time, these are not negative things. So what we want to look at first off is what a buying indicator actually is. Now, in my mind, it's a pretty fancy term for the verbal or nonverbal cues that help us to understand that somebody is interested in progressing with our sales process. And they remind us to move that sales process forward. So essentially, if you are doing Zoom calls or video calls or telephone calls or in-person meetings with prospects, so with key decision makers in organizations, then you should be looking out for these verbal or non-verbal cues that will trigger in you a reminder to move forward to the next step of the sales process. Now, buying signals and indicators, they actually happen throughout both your sales and marketing process. And actually, they're probably easier to spot, particularly if you are somebody who has ever sold business to consumer. They're probably easier to spot in the marketing process, because we can, in our marketing processes, understand the level of interest that a potential buyer has in us or in our products by the actions that they might take throughout that marketing process. So things like, have they clicked a specific link in a newsletter? Have they submitted their details to get some kind of lead magnet from you? Have they responded to an email that you've sent? Or, when I say to you all on the podcast, hey, if you've got ideas for future episodes, send me them. Have they responded to something like that from you? Essentially, any way during your marketing process that they are engaging with you or with your company. Okay, so that might look like some kind of mass engagement, i.e., you've put out a post on LinkedIn and they've commented on it. Usually the sort of things around congratulations, or you bought a new home or something like that. Or it can look like what I would call more stealthy, more stealthy marketing activities. So actually going back and checking your newsletter or content to see who's clicked and following up with them. All right. Now, these buying indicators are important in a marketing process for us or for companies, because companies use these exact same strategies when they're selling directly to consumers as well, because they indicate that these are people who are genuinely interested in exploring products or services with us. And they tell us that we should be communicating with these people either more or differently or from a sales perspective. Now, during the sales process, we still have buying indicators. But like I said earlier, they focus slightly more on certain elements of the sales process over others. So, for example, you are much more likely to start seeing buying indicators in your lead generation process. You are much more likely to start seeing buying indicators in your sales call processes. You're much more likely to see buying indicators in your ongoing business development processes. So the way that we maintain and leverage relationships with prospective buyers. Okay. And when it comes to these parts of our sales process and where we might see the buying indicators, it's not limited just to that initial sale. So just to the parts of our sales puzzle where we might get that initial conversion. This actually goes on throughout our sales process. So it's, our ongoing business development, not necessarily for that initial sale, but for creating future sales. It's how we create upsell and resell opportunities that we would spot buying indicators. If you're inside the C-suite, you'll know that I talk an awful lot about that process of maximization. So how we upsell or resell after that initial conversion. And so you will see these buying indicators coming in things like your debriefs and like email exchanges or feedback opportunities that you have after that initial conversion. Okay. But essentially, what we're talking about today is just understanding a bit more about the two key aspects of positive buying indicators that we don't always recognize, and that sometimes we can actually get a little bit disheartened about. And obviously, I say to everybody that this is caveated with the knowledge behind this is amazing, but you need to spend time implementing, practicing, and refining these skills in order to really get the most out of it. You know, one of the things, this is a slight segue for everybody, but one of the things that I find interesting about the professional development world is that we can get very, very good at learning. And sometimes that can make us feel like we know it or that we're doing something, when in fact, we're not implementing or practicing those skills regularly enough. So everything that I talk about today, I want you to be inspired by. I want you to start looking out for these buying indicators happening in your business. But most importantly, I actually want you to start practicing these skills. And if you do need support with that, then obviously we do have 14 spots left inside this new live cohort of the C-suite that we have running for 2025. Okay. So stakeholder buying indicators, when they're happening, we should be using them to progress our sales processes. However, some people feel like when people or their prospects on sales calls are expressing what I would see as being a buying indicator, that actually they're being negative. So let's take sales calls, for example. Where do buying indicators happen on sales calls, or what kind of indicators should we be looking out for? Well, there are a few. So we have the normal ones, which would be one of your stakeholders being really interested in a service that you provide, or being really interested in your area of specialism. That's a really positive, really simple buying indicator that we can spot. And they might do that verbally. So they might actively be saying to you, yes, we know that this is a problem in our organization. How can you help us to fix that? Or your services sound great. I've heard all about them from insert other person's name here. And I would love to know how they can help us inside our company. They might also do this in a nonverbal way. So if you're on a sales call or if you're in a face-to-face sales meeting, they might actually demonstrate that they're interested in your products or your services or your area of specialism by doing simple things like leaning forward, being interested, taking notes. Those things can actually show us in conversations from a visual perspective when somebody is interested in taking the conversation forward. Unfortunately, even with buying indicators like that you might be listening to this thinking, oh gosh, Jess, that's super simple. Obviously, they sound interested. Some people can mix that up and they can feel like when somebody is taking notes that they're judging them. So they think that the decision maker is in some way judging what they're saying or what they're doing or not believing it or trying to find something to reference back to later. And I just want you to sit with that and think about the type of buying indicators that you might be missing. Are you somebody who is super focused on any kind of telephone, Zoom, however retro you want to go with it, face-to-face sales meeting, and genuinely in that present moment, are you actively engaged? Are you looking at how they're responding to things? Are you taking what they say at face value? Or have you got that little mind gremlin that is going around in your brain screaming, they don't think you're good enough, and kind of clanging the little cymbals? It's so embarrassing. I'm saying this and I fully realize that I'm in my own office with a podcast microphone, but I am in fact clapping my hands like the little cymbal mind gremlin in your brain. So, you're welcome to join me on that. But if you do or have ever felt like that, it's completely normal. And it's something that lots of people experience. But it does mean that if you are looking at those clear and positive buying indicators and finding almost that you've got that voice inside your brain that's telling you that there's something wrong, that you might actually be missing out on some of the more tricky or initially negative buying indicators that can come off too. So things like, for example, asking about terms and conditions can be sometimes seen as being negative. So if a company asks what your cancellation clauses are, for example, or they ask what would happen if you weren't able to deliver or you were sick, or if their people weren't enjoying a training, we can sometimes look at these as being really negative indicators that they think that your training wouldn't be good enough, or they think that they're going to cancel, or they think that they don't want to pay you in the time frame that you want to be paid. And actually, these things are not. These things are buying indicators, because what these things suggest are that they are actively thinking about the practicalities of using your products or your services inside their organization. So we all know that there are practical factors when you make any decision to move forward with literally anything. If you thought about your own business and the decisions that you make around investing in your own learning and development, you start to think about the practicalities. And that is actually a good thing. That is you thinking, can I make this work for me? And I see it a lot. I get lots of emails from people who say, I'm really interested in the C-suite, for example. How long will it take me each week? How much time will I have to invest? How many additional costs are there in terms of software that I might need to use? Would it be right for my business? When I get these questions, I'm never irritated by them. I don't think, oh my gosh, these people think that the C-suite isn't a great option. I think, oh wow, look at these people who are committed to their own learning development, and most importantly, committed to finding the right solution for them. And that's what I want you to start thinking about on your sales call. So if you are seeing decision makers who are asking questions that you think are tricky around things like payment terms, clauses, cancellation, what happens if people don't enjoy it, what happens if we do a pilot and it doesn't work, all of those kinds of things, these are not any indication that they think that your solution won't work. These are positive buying indicators. These are them trying to factor in the practicalities of how something would work, what it would look like, how it's going to benefit them. And I think that this is really, really important, because sometimes we refer to these commonly as objections, and we think that, we have to handle them. And don't get me wrong, we absolutely need to create space for stakeholders to talk about things that they are concerned about, where they need more reassurance, talk through ideas. But actually, some of these are not objections. They're not even objections in disguise. They're just that person processing how something would work, processing the information that you've given them, and trying to factor in all of the relevant information that they need to make the decision. Okay. So when we're on these sales calls, and I'm purely talking about sales calls today because, as you can imagine, there are so many so many buying indicators that can come in the lead generation process, in the sales call process, in the ongoing business development process, in the delivery process, the upsell resell process, that it would take me literally hours. But I think that there are some important areas that you need to consider when you are on your sales calls to make sure that you aren't A, missing these buying indicators, but B, that you're not reacting in a way that inadvertently puts your prospect off. Because again, what we're seeing right now, and this isn't something that is talked about widely, I don't think, or talked about widely enough. We're seeing that lots of people are scuppering their own sales processes because they're not feeling super confident with their sales skills and how to handle certain scenarios. So, for example, if we talk about objections, and there are only 6 main objections that you're ever going to get. Things like, it's not a priority for us right now, we don't have the budget, we're already working with a competitor, we have an internal resource that we're using. Those things that you and I hear all of the time. If people don't see them as buying indicators, then it reduces the amount of revenue that they're going to make or potentially make, because they don't have those transparent conversations in a way that makes the decision maker really think about why it is that they have that particular objection. And they also end up potentially scuppering the relationship or opportunity because they don't confidently handle those situations in a way that's consultative. And what I mean by consultative, just to be super clear, is not saying yes to everything that the stakeholder wants or believes and agreeing with them endlessly. It's actually being that commercial, consultative challenger of some of the beliefs that they have that may not be actually working for their organization or for their team. So sometimes when organizations say to me, oh, we're already working with a competitor on that, one of my first questions is, oh, awesome. How's that working for you? I'm not saying, oh, who are you working with? This is why I'm better than them. Here are all of my justifications why you should come and move across to me. I'm just asking and giving them the opportunity for clarity that they are developing themselves. And again, if you are inside the C-suite, then please make sure that you do go ahead and look at the objection handling guides, because I have written 3 or 4 different ways that you can handle every single common objection possible, so that you can answer those easily on sales calls and in your lead generation process as well. So please don't forget to have a look at those. Now, when we look at these key buying indicators on sales calls, we go from, like I say, that very positive, very clear, super interested in your products, in your services, tell me more, to things like them asking about the price, sharing the problems or challenges that they're facing and asking how the solution would help them, being interested in things like case studies or examples. If they are asking about next steps in general, so when would be a good time to book another call? What else would we need to discuss? Bringing in another colleague to a call is always a good sign of a positive buying indicator. Or asking to arrange a follow-up meeting where they can bring along another colleague involved in that sign-off process. Or things like talking about how their current product or service doesn't actually meet their needs. These are all buying indicators, okay? They are usually verbal because I don't know that anybody is going to talk about their particular, I don't know, leadership development challenges through interpretive dance, but prove me wrong. But these are all mainly verbal buying indicators, and they are situations where that person, that decision maker, is trying to think about how they can progress to the next stage of that sales process with you. And really, this leads me to my biggest point of today's episode, which is seeing sales as a process. I think so often it has become really common to imagine that the sale just happens instantly. And it doesn't. Again, if you think about the bigger purchases that you make in your life, maybe you've bought a house or a car or a camper van or something that has been meaningful to you, you didn't necessarily just wake up one morning, think, oh, I'm going to go and buy a car today, and bought the first one that you saw. You probably did some research. You probably went and had a look. You went and had a test drive. You progressed through key elements of those sales processes where you consistently showed that company or that particular salesperson that you were interested in the product, in the service, even if it wasn't initially what you set out to buy. And what I see a lot of the time is that we start to look at which one area of our sales process is going to get us the sale. And if you've followed me for a while, you'll know that there isn't one stage in the process that's going to get you the sale. There are 5 key stages to your sales process that you need to consistently refine and that you consistently need to work on to make them more efficient and effective. So anything that you're doing where you focused on, for example, improving your sales calls, that's going to have a knock-on impact on other areas of your sales process. Some of those impacts are going to be really positive. So, for example, if you improve your sales call skills, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to see a higher conversion rate from sales call to proposals going out. You might also, if you improve your sales calls, realize that parts of your lead generation process don't work, because you might find that actually it's identified that you're getting on calls with a lot of people who aren't the right people for you to talk to. So when we look at any element of our sales process, it's really, really important to be focused on this as an overall endeavor, rather than thinking, okay, cool, now I recognize buying indicators. That's great. I'm going to nail all of my sales calls. What we need to think is, okay, cool. Now I'm maximizing every opportunity from the sales calls that I'm getting. And start thinking about which other elements of the sales process that might impact. Do you actually need to be booking more calls? Do you need to be working on your offers and proposals? Do you need to be thinking about how you deliver an amazing experience? Do you need to be thinking about what happens afterwards? How are you leveraging those experiences to sell more? Okay, so I really, really want you over the course of this second quarter of the year, because it is a pivotal quarter and it is a really good opportunity to generate significant revenue from corporate clients, if you follow the process and if you don't just look at one singular part of your process and only work on that and then expect everything else to kind of figure itself out. Okay. So final thing that I wanted to touch on today was your objections. And I think we've touched upon this in this episode, but just so that you're super, super clear, objections are a buying indicator. Okay. They mean that they're actually considering your service. And that is super, super important. So when we talk about those 6 main objections that come up, we are talking about those as being positive buying indicators, not sticks that you should be using to beat yourself with or feeling like you need to justify your worth or existence in some way. Okay. So I know that we've given a couple of examples here, but just to be super, super clear, when we look at the buying indicators that happen on sales calls specifically for B2B, we have those very clear, very positive, supportive of next steps buying indicators that are, this sounds great, how can we work with you? but your objections are just as important, and perhaps even more important as buying indicators. Because when somebody says, yes, I'm really interested, that sounds great, we don't always allocate the right time to digging into the practicalities. We don't always, because we're so excited that they're excited and interested, and we're excited and we want them to be interested, we don't always have the transparent conversations that we might need to about what their sign-off process looks like or what time frame they're looking to work to. We probably don't always go into the budget piece, because we'll listen to them when they say, oh yeah, we can just get any budget. You just give us a number and we'll go and find it, right? We don't necessarily push back on those things because we think, oh, they're so interested, they're just going to do it because they're positive. Whereas the prospects that we actually have objections from, where they're giving us those areas or elements that they might need more reassurance around or that they're concerned about, those are the prospects that we'll actually have better conversations with, that we're more likely to make bigger sales with, and that actually we're going to be fulfilling with our scope and not having to feel like we are constantly going above our boundaries when it comes to delivery as well. All right. So 2 buying indicators when you're on a sales call. One obviously is the super positive, let's go, we're really interested, we love it. And the second surprise one is that objection piece. So any time you have a sales call moving forward, when they say something like, it isn't a priority for us right now, I want you to be thinking about, okay, where's the opportunity here? And how do I support them to see that? All right. So if you have been missing out on some of those buying indicators through this episode, please, please, please make sure that you make some time to think about how you want to handle them moving forward. And know that if you're spotting them and not navigating them correctly, you are losing revenue. So please make a concerted effort to go and note down some of those examples that I've given you from today, so that you can start to implement that into your real sales calls and see the epic things that come from it and the great conversations that come from it, and ultimately the revenue that goes on to be made. I really hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and if you have, yay, please feel free to drop me a line with other interesting areas that you would like to hear more about. We've got some amazing episodes coming up, but I am planning a huge batch recording session after I speak at an awesome event in March called The Big Festoon. So if you are listening to this after I've spoken at The Big Festoon, then welcome to the Selling to Corporate community. We're excited to have you here. And please feel free to drop me an email with other episodes that you think might be of interest. I'll get them covered. I'll see you all really, really soon.